He poured the chestnuts into the water and told the young man next to him that the ones that floated up were bad and the ones that sank were good. Kevin quickly took out his notebook and took notes. The man immediately realized what he was doing and reached out to Kevin to ask for tuition. But the future billionaire was still broke. So he went home and tried to figure it out on his own, pouring a sack of chestnuts into the water and trying again and again. He learned how to stir from the stallholders, what kind of pebbles to use to make the best stir fry, and stole the secret soup from the next door neighbor when he wasn't looking, and then went home to tweak it over and over again to come up with his own secret recipe. Soon a decent fried chestnuts came out of the frying pan and was unanimously praised by the whole family. However, the next thing is the most crucial thing. Kevin temporarily rented a booth in the mall where there was not only a lot of traffic but also precise food buyers. Because he had to go to school during the day, Kevin could only leave the business to the housekeeper. He thought the business would be booming, but the reality was very grim. The money he earned was not even enough to pay the electricity bill. Then he noticed that other owners were selling, so he asked his housekeeper to learn how to solicit customers. But the next day they didn't even sell a single box. Kevin couldn't figure out what the problem was, so he rushed to the marketplace to take a closer look and discovered that underneath the competitive exterior lay a top secret. You see, these fundraisers were in front of the restrooms and they didn't need to advertise that people were coming in and out of the restrooms to make donations because everyone coming out of the restrooms was so tired that they had to make a donation. So Kevin quickly ran back to the mall and paid a high price to move the snack section to the exit of the mall so that everyone who went home could buy some chestnuts for their family. And sure enough, the next day, they were doing great, using bag after bag of chestnuts. But just when things were looking up, Kevin got a notice from the mall to leave because the fumes from the machines were so bad that the ceilings were yellowing. At first he tried to fix it with a coat of paint, but the paint fell on other items, and this time he had to pay for the damage and was kicked out of the mall altogether. At night, he learns from his mother that his father's business is failing and the family owes $80 million. The family buys a plane ticket to the United States and leaves the next day. But when he was about to leave, Kevin suddenly changed his mind and said he wanted to stay and continue to do what he loved even if it ended in failure. Looking at his determined eyes, his father didn't ask him to stay, but persuaded him to give up frying chestnuts and go back to school. Kevin promised to stop frying, but it was obviously impossible for him to study because yesterday his girlfriend bought a box of seaweed from Chinatown, and when Kevin tasted it he realized that the more he ate, the more addictive it became. So he aspired to be the king of seaweed in Thailand. Why does seaweed turn into seaweed when it's fried and sold at a higher price? The boy couldn't figure it out. So he spent all his savings and bought 10 boxes of seaweed. He thought he could make a fortune by deep frying seaweed, but no matter how he deep fried the seaweed, it was always bitter and astringent in his mouth. After hundreds of trials, Kevin still couldn't get the flavor he wanted, but by now he had run out of seaweed. So he had to sell his favorite computers and game consoles to get his last 5 boxes back. He continued to fry the seaweed, and the splatters of oil burned his arms with scars that will probably not fade for years to come. But even so, the seaweed was soon used up again, and there was still nothing to eat. Kevin's despair was complete, and as he turned his head in despair, he suddenly realized there was another bag of seaweed on the ground. It turns out that when he was coming home from the rain yesterday, this bag of seaweed accidentally fell on the ground and got completely soaked by the rain and soaked all night. When he picked it up and fried it in the pan, Kevin had no hope, but when he tried it, he found that it was not dry and not oily, just the flavor he wanted. Then Kevin finally realized that the seaweed itself was very salty, so he had to soak it in water before frying. With the exclusive recipe, his business was really booming and every customer gave him a 5-star rating after trying it. But it's too slow to make money only by retailing, and by this time, his house has been locked up and is about to be auctioned off by the court. It turned out that his father had borrowed $40 million against the house, a sum he couldn't repay even if he sold seaweed for the rest of his life. Kevin couldn't figure out a solution until that night when he went to the convenience store and realized that there were 3 convenience stores in just one intersection, and he saw this as an opportunity. So as soon as the sun came up, he put on his dad's old suit and went to the manager of the convenience store group of companies to ask all their stores to sell seaweed for him. But the manager refused on the spot because Kevin's seaweed did not meet the company's core concepts in terms of packaging size and price, and even ended the talks without even giving him a chance to try it. But Kevin Hart is very happy because he did not spend a penny to find the problem of the goods, so he immediately found a design company to ask the boss to change the design of the packaging change. The next day, with a box of Little Boss seaweed again to the convenience store headquarters, the receptionist told him that the manager is in a meeting, so Kevin sat down and waited. However, he waited for a whole day until Kevin realized that the manager was not in the meeting but deliberately avoiding him. Kevin was so angry that he gave the seaweed to the security guard and resolved never to start a business again. But the opportunity always comes at a moment's notice. An employee found the box of seaweed when he came to work and took a few packs and opened them and tasted them, not realizing that they were so tasty that he instinctively wanted to shiver his fingers, and his joy was soon shared with more colleagues. So Kevin was called back to the company and the manager said, "The flavor of your seaweed is fantastic. We've decided to put your product on the shelves in 72,000 supermarkets nationwide in a month's time. But in the meantime we'll be going to your factory for a hygiene inspection. Kevin was horrified because he didn't have a factory in his house with nothing but pots and pans. But he didn't want to miss his chance to make a difference. So he went to the bank and got a loan. But the bank manager took one look at his information, and at the age of 19, his family still owed $40 million in debt, and the manager had no choice but to turn him down and advise him to study hard. Kevin had no choice but to go to the used car market and sell his last asset. But the money he got was only enough to rent an abandoned warehouse in the suburbs. So he put down half the deposit and spent the rest on renovations and staff. And when the quality inspectors from head office arrived, they found all sorts of problems, like paint not drying on the doors, employees not wearing gloves, sinks full of dirt. Just take a picture and put it on the internet and Kevin would get a lot of flack. As the inspector was about to leave, Kevin promised the manager that he'd make it right soon, but they just told him to wait for the results. On his way out, the butler slipped him a bag of money and told him to take care of it. Kevin used to like to do things this way, but this time he didn't, because he had learned from his previous experience that there are no shortcuts in business. So he got down to business and sold seaweed and made changes wherever he couldn't get it right and made the factory look brand new. After the second inspection, Kevin finally waited for the results of the inspection, but just at this time the printer ran out of ink, just missing the last line of the key results. Kevin was so anxious that he ran outside the house and finally saw the last two words representing success under the blinding sunlight. At last, everything was on track. On the first morning after the shipment was delivered, an overworked Kevin dialed his father's number with a nosebleed. In just 2 years he had paid off all his family's debts, and at the age of 26 he had become Thailand's youngest billionaire through his own hard work. His little boss seaweed also went to the world, exported to 27 countries, and this is actually a true story. In this diversified society, there is more than one path in life. May we all have the courage to pursue our own path to create their own wonderful life.